Was just listening to two movie critics talking about responding to a question about how, you know, um, like a horror movie, especially you get into kind of later horror movies like Jason or Freddy, you you start, if not rooting for the villain, it becomes a vicarious thrill to root for the villain, which kind of makes me kind of think about just characters and stories in general, of how we live through stories. Um, listening to, not listening, reading The Mirror and the Light and Thomas Cromwell, and feeling his sorrow, feeling kind of delight in his quips. Um, Also being somewhat being repulsed by his violent, torturing actions. It's like you're invested in a character, um, in a way. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the big thing about stories is being invested, becoming, in a sense, lately traveling in characters, in stories, in situations. Um, Either saying like, I would do the same thing, or oh, I wish I could do the same thing, or oh God, that's disgusting. I would never ever do that. I would never torture a man. Um, or and to sometimes questions like, well, if I was in that situation, if I was in that time, you know, would I do the same thing to maintain my power, my advantage? Um, or Edgar Rice Burroughs and the majestic hero, and it's just sort of fun to like, oh, if I was a hero and I loved Deja Thoris and was striving for her and all that, it's just like, would I, you know, um, even then when it's probably a lot less believable, it's just that joy of stories, but it's also just something of it's exploiting something in a human being, I guess, of human psychology, of this sympathy that we have for each other. Sometimes other, and also able to cast people as monsters as well. So to either really sympathize, and like Kristen Lavensdatter, it's like I feel like I've lived her life with her. I'm so identified with her. But at the same time, there's like the monster characters in the Edgar Rice Burroughs movie, in a story, or the orcs in Lord of the Rings, or Thomas More in The Mirror and the Light. That these are others that you're to get. Though I would probably argue that in The Mirror and the Light, Hilary Mantel does enough to show you through the cracks there that um, Thomas More is as much Thomas Cromwell as much also reflections on our own psychology. It's like, it's where the monster, where there are no monsters. There's just, oh, that's another human being, and that could be me, or I could be treating someone that way. It's like it's nasty. So I guess, horror movie villains have their thing of like, that's the monster, is a good embodiment, and there's a thrill there, and he's like, oh, we have these dark impulses in ourselves that can get released and let out in this kind of healthy way, um, but also is just, it's like, there's that, and then there's real world monsters, and what has happened, and that's less much less healthy. All right, so that's my ramble in the dark tonight.